The passage I'll be reading today is an excerpt from the book A Thousand Splendid Suns by Khalid Hosseini. A Thousand Splendid Suns is the tale of 3 generations of suffering in a war-stricken Afghanistan. The book is set in 90s Kabul, and it follows the story of Miriam, a child born out of wedlock and who is set to suffer the consequences of it for the rest of her life, and Layla, who has barely any time to know her brothers before they die tragically in the war. This book deals with loss and the war and the sacrifices that many women had to make to survive in these events. In this passage, Layla's family is packing after her parents finally decide to leave Afghanistan and the war behind. But before they could do that, Layla loses everything she's ever known and is thrust into a life of violence and abuse. "You're not selling this, are you?" Layla said, lifting Mommy's wedding dress. It cascaded open onto her lap. She touched the lace and ribbon along the neckline, the hand-sewn pearls on the sleeves. Mommy shrugged and took it from her. She tossed it brusquely on a pile of clothes, like ripping off a band-aid in one stroke. Layla thought. It was Bobby who had the most painful task. Layla found him standing in his study, a rueful expression on his face as he surveyed his shelves. He was wearing a second-hand t-shirt with a picture of San Francisco's Red Bridge on it. Thick fog rose from the wide-capped towers and engulfed the bridge's towers. "You know the old bit," he said. "You're on a deserted island. You can have 5 books. Which do you choose?" "I never thought I'd actually have to." "We'll have to start you a new collection, Bobby." "Mm-hmm." He smiled sadly. "I can't believe I'm leaving Kabul. I went to school here, got my first job here, became a father in this town. It's strange to think that I'll be sleeping beneath another city sky soon." "It's strange for me too." All day, this poem about Kabul has been bouncing around my head. Saib Tabrizi wrote it back in the 17th century, I think. I used to know the whole poem, but all I can remember now is 2 lines. "One could not count the moons that shimmer on her roofs, or the 1,000 splendid suns that hide behind her walls." Layla looked up, saw he was weeping. She put an arm around his waist. "Oh, Bobby, we'll come back. When this war is over, we'll come back to Kabul, inshallah. You'll see." On the 3rd morning, Layla began moving the piles of things to the yard and depositing them by the front door. They would fetch a taxi then and take it all to a pawn shop. Layla kept shuffling between the house and the yard, back and forth, carrying stacks of clothes and dishes and box after box of Bobby's books. She should have been exhausted by noon, when the mound of belongings by the front door had grown waist-high. But with each trip, she knew that she was that much closer to seeing Tariq again, and with each trip, her legs became more sprightly, her arms more tireless. "We're going to need a big taxi." Layla looked up. It was Mommy calling down from her bedroom upstairs. She was leaning out the window, resting her elbows on the sill. The sun, bright and warm, caught in her graying hair, shone on her drawn, thin face. Mommy was wearing the same cobalt blue dress she had worn the day of the lunch party 4 months earlier. A youthful dress meant for a young woman, but for a moment, Mommy looked to Layla like an old woman with stringy arms and sunken temples and slow eyes rimmed by darkened circles of weariness. an altogether different creature from the plump, round-faced woman beaming radiantly from those cranny-witting photos. "Two big taxis," Layla said. She could see Bobby, too, in the living room, stacking boxes of books atop each other. She thought suddenly of her dream. She and Tarek on a quilt. The ocean, the wind, the dunes. What had it sounded like, she wondered now. The singing sands. Layla stopped. She saw a grey lizard crawl out of a crack in the ground. Its head shot side to side, blinked, darted under a rock. Layla pictured the beach again, except now the singing was all around. And growing, louder and louder by the moment, higher and higher. It flooded her ears, drowned everything else out. The gulls were feathered mimes now, opening and closing their beaks noiselessly, and the waves were crashing with foam and spray, but no roar. The sand sang on, screaming now, a sound like a tinkling. Not a tinkling, no, a whistling. Layla dropped the books at her feet. She looked up to the sky, shielded her eyes with one hand. Then a giant roar. Behind her, a flash of white. The ground lurched beneath her feet. Something hot and powerful slammed into her from behind. It knocked her out of her sandals, lifted her up. Now she was flying, twisting and rotating in the air, seeing sky, then earth, then sky, then earth. A big burning chunk of wood whipped by. So did 1,000 shards of glass, and it seemed to Layla that she could see each individual one flying all around her, flipping slowly end over end, the sunlight catching in each. Tiny, beautiful rainbows. Then Layla struck the wall, crashed to the ground. On her face and arms, a shower of dirt and pebbles and glass. The last thing she was aware of was seeing something thud to the ground nearby. A bloody chunk of something. On it, the tip of a red bridge poking through thick fog. Thank you.